very delighted to be here. My pleasure. Two things I'll promise you. Number one is I'm not going to use the word evident. You won't hear it from me, evidence. And the second one would be there's not one single chart, so you won't feel bored. As a tradition, I acknowledge the Minnan people, the land, and the elders in the present and future, and the land that we're standing in. And so I'll start today with, and thank you for inviting me. So I'll give you a little bit about me. So a top magazine 5 years ago, they elected the world top 20 design thinkers. So I ranked number 19, it's not bad. So number 18 is James Dyson. You know the guy with the vacuum machine thing? Right. And then number 20 is Brad Pitt. So I think Kate originally wanted to invite Mr. Pitt, but it was busy, so I'm kind of like the sort of second choice. So I'm happy to be here. So let's start with that. I think this is a recurring sort of story, and you know, he's a very wise man, as you can tell. And I think this is sort of success is a beast. I think this is sort of very true. Whether you're looking at companies, organizations, states, cities, and all of that, you look at, you know, when a lot of sort of states are depending on a very strong recurring revenue base, whether it's resource and other things, or manufacturing, or even companies that are doing really, really well for the last 50 years, sort of companies what people think that will never fail, and we're actually seeing that, you know, they are actually on the edge of failing. So, and part of that is success is a serious problem. So I'll talk a little bit about design thinking. We do have a lot of problems. I think most of the problems that you're dealing with there are relatively smaller problems compared to, we have a world which is aging very fast. And it's a very serious one. Look at sort of China, and it's never in history you have a country where you're aging so fast, and then with sort of the growth, and then you're looking at the developed economies. We have a very serious problem dealing with aging, and the world is not designed for that. Even you pick up your smartphone, you know, by the time you reach 85, you probably don't know how to use it. Mobility is a serious problem, and the world is not designed for that because we're never meant to live beyond a certain age. And then where do we find growth? We're looking at a post-growth environment. You know, even Apple's of the world is looking for growth. Everyone's looking for growth. And companies, economies, it's a serious one. Where do you find growth? Because we have too many of everything. We have too many factories, too many brands, too many of anything. And the second one would be, can we feed everyone on this planet? With more and more people, you know, everything, oceans, everything are kind of in trouble. And how do we deal with feeding so many people come into this world? And then today we're relying more and more on algorithm, these little machines and lines of codes in a box that we trust them to do many things today. But do you really trust them? We've been just testing recently on an algorithm based on sort of self-driving cars, and we've been playing with that for a while. We did a test with the computers. We put three things in front. One is a deer, the other one is a dog, and then is an old person. So we want to test which one the car will run over. It's not easy. You can't code ethics and values into computer algorithms. So that's the kind of work we're dealing with today. This is a bigger problem to solve, and that's the kind of me and my 1,000 people do every day, so try to solve this problem. So are we over-industrialized? I mean, do we think we are, or we're not? Do you think the quality of food has improved the last 20 years? Fish tastes better than before or worse? Yes. And then are humans becoming tools? I think that's a more important one because, I mean, you think about this, you know, ever in the early days when, you know, the Aboriginal people know how to create tools to make a living and grow things and get things done. And today we're still relying on tools. But tools means very, very different thing today. I think we're on the urge of really trying to figure out, are we the tools or the machines the tools? I'll give you the answers in the next 10 minutes, okay? So before you go to lunch. So many business models are broken today. And you probably realize that, I always say half of the Fortune 500 company will not be around in 5 years. I'm not talking about 10 years. So, and this is where, we work with all the top Fortune 500s. And they come to me, they won't tell people because it's a sort of a secret services, because they realize that this is the kind of world, that this continuous future that they are dealing with. And they all know the business models are broken, but a lot of companies refuse to acknowledge it. So let's use an example of Camel, right? Do you guys like Camel? Okay, good. Me too. So what do you do with a dead camel today? Today, this is how the Fortune 500s of the world deal with it. They declare the camel is not dead. Right? They go on CNBC and tell people that the camel is not dead, just having a little nap, that's all. And if it doesn't work, they will whip the camel a bit harder and try to rebrand it and hire some ad guys and rename it, whatever. This is like the sleeping camel. And then, or they go and tell people, well, it's always been like this. There's always the way that we ride this camel. And then, if it doesn't work, hire lots of consultants and figure out how to develop evidence-based best practices. That's kind of what it works, how it works, right? And if all of these things doesn't work, you go to the investment bankers, those overpaid people, and try to merge all the dead camels together and into one big company. And then try to put it in the market with a high valuation and get rid of it so the pension funds buy it. That's kind of the world we live in. Either people are stupid or dumb or they are just scamming. That's the kind of world. We never really try to solve real problems that we have. We do have a lot of real problems. And that's kind of what design thinkers are coming in. So as company gets bigger and bigger, these companies are so big, so scary these days. You walk into the head office, it's like some of the companies are the size of government today. And you think about that, they become so specialized, these people, and nobody knows exactly how the machine works. Every CEO I talk to have actually no idea what's going on because everything is driven by these big machines. Machines become sort of half human and half automation. So we are on the brink of a revolution that actually fundamentally change the way we work, the way we think, the way we play, and the fundamental of our economics, whether it's companies or state or region. And it won't be like anything that we've seen before. I think we're literally at that point of time today. I don't know how many people agree with that statement or disagree with the statement? That's good. How many people do not disagree with that statement? Please come over. Oh, there's a few of them. I'd like to talk to you. So this is the world we're living in. This is magazine in 2020, and this is actually happening. So artificial intelligence is all over. You actually don't know it. Sometimes you check with customer services, it's actually a robot. These bot systems are already in place. I think they are probably to the point that 60%, 70% ready for mass market deployment. So you think about work, you think about all those countries, Philippines and Ireland and all of those countries that have call centers that hire thousands and thousands of people. Those jobs will be gone very quickly. I promise you in 3 years, those won't exist. It will be managed by a bot that responds like human. With natural language processing, with emotion sensing technologies, literally, those will be gone. So as you hear previously from our chief scientists, countries have a problem with jobs. You think about even trading. Today, you know that you put money on your mutual funds and all this stuff. 99% of those mutual funds underperform the market, actively managed one. So we're paying a lot of money for people to manage our money and end up underperforming it. And today, that's not going to change because these robots coming in and do a better job. And then we don't have to pay them. We don't have to feed them. They don't eat. And then we have this synthetic biology. It's happening. We're experimenting with machines that actually you can customize synthetic biology at home, almost like you're doing with your Photoshop. And then when Apple's coming in with the Apple car, I think Apple car will probably be taking over most of these jobs from Detroit. And there's a reality. You know, Detroit just barely coming back, barely catching their breath, and now realize another wave coming. And then there is sort of music composed by robot, and these are pretty much sort of getting started already. So in the future, your royalty will be paid to a machine, not to an individual. So you talk about the creative industries. What creative industries? And you talk about the end of ways where you can trace back every product going in from where. This is kind of the world we're living in. This is not sci-fi. This is sort of all the things that we're working with our client, figure out what it means to them. Doesn't matter what you do and what's sort of part of the value chain that you're in. So, and these things, we call them technology today. But I think you go back 10, 20 years, we used to call this technology. But do you call this technology today? No. And all these things will become, the generation of, sort of first generation of technologies are only for geeks in the Silicon Valley. Those are all over, those are gone. Today, technologies are for the mass. Every one of you have a smartphone. These are advanced technology there, but you don't call it technology. They are just tools. So there's no different from the tool we designed to use for farming and for digging and drilling. It's the same thing. So when you start thinking about planning for the future, what are these tools, and how can you use this to improve your competitive advantage? And that's kind of an important piece, because this is the future, right? The future is here. And as society is getting more complex and more stakeholder becomes more diverse these days, you probably know government have less influence these days over things. And design thinking is playing a critical role in what is that co-creation of the future looks like between communities, regionals, and every level, and private sectors. So design thinking will become sort of the competitive advantage of not only companies. It will be nations, it will be regionals, and cities. Because that's where you compete for high-value living standard. So it's not about, people think about design thinking. People always say, well, it's all about new ideas. It's about, like, you know, every time you think about it, you see like some kissing in the room with some colorful furniture, a lot of sticky notes there. Those are not design thinking. Those are just people playing around with ideas. Design thinking is a serious way of mapping the future, visualizing the future, understanding the dynamics and the behavior, not just you talk about the industrial behavior as well as the individuals, people's, humans' behavior, and bring all together what's the future looks like and how do I participate, knowing that these new tools will be massively available. I'll skip this. So design thinking is human-centric. A part of the reason that why big companies, every CEO is asking for design thinking. It's funny, every time I get a call from the CEO's office and say, Idris, I want design thinking. Then I ask them, so what is it you're looking for? And they said, I really don't know, but I want some of those. So I don't have to explain what that is, but they're good clients, you know, they don't know what they're buying. That's the best client you can find. So we help them to put human at the center of the company. The theory is pretty simple. Like these companies are like machines, and you know, they were designed in a world where there was like sort of a lot of demand and not enough supply. But today is reverse. You know, there's plenty of supply and just not enough demand. And that means that you have to start thinking about how do you put human in the center of the equation. You're talking about human capital. You want to talk about getting the best imagination from people. You talk about integrating humanity into business economic. That's the future of the world. That's the future of organizations. I think that eventually the system will take out some of the greed in the current sort of business ecosystem. You will have more sustainable business. And that's kind of the future of organizations. So understanding human needs, so this is the example. You know, I don't know what the Maslow thing was designed. It was like, it doesn't really make sense. For me, it's pretty straightforward. People need coffee, and then a new iPhone, Wi-Fi, and need a vacation in Tasmania. That's all you need, right? So understanding that needs, I think that needs changing very fast today. If you talk to these millennials, they have a very different views of the world. And just like that, the guy who used the kids manual, whatever it is, that's the kind of people you're dealing with. Those are the people who's going to influence the future and shape the future. And these people have very different views of the world and very different views of what collaboration means. So design thinking is a dynamic, constructive process. So how is it different from traditional planning? It's more iterative in nature. You have many rounds. You keep improvising. It requires ongoing definition and redefinition. In traditional planning, you define something, you make sure they're clearly defined, everybody agreed upon, the stakeholders sign the name, all of that. But in this world, it's a lot of experiment. It's about how do you redefine value. I think you have to revisit everything called value. Once you know how to create value, how to define that, and how you extract value from that. So it involves a lot of visualization assessment too, and that's kind of where the design come in. But the design and the thinking are slightly two different things. And design thinking shapes organization culture. We work with some of these companies to help them to look at, because they're so structured in the way today's organizations are designed in the 50s, where you have the sort of the M form, your functional silo. So the idea is that you have people who do marketing well, operations well, HR well, information technology well, and then you put them all together, you have all the expertise. Now, the problem with that is when you have all those people who do everything well, it doesn't mean that the outcome is well. Right. There's a very simple example, like you take out your smartphone and you walk into sort of Cupertino, and then they will tell you, the screen guy will tell you, I want the bigger screen. The processor guy, the engineer will tell you that I want the faster processors. And the camera person will tell you that I want the best camera with this and that. And then the battery guy will say, well, I want to last for 2 days. You end up getting not an iPhone, you get like a toaster. Right? And they're all doing the job. And the same analogy, organization. The same thing in government, the same thing in sort of any organization that requires decision making. Because once you have those specializations, that means you're sub-optimizing the whole. So design thinking is help you how to harmonize that so people make enough trade-off so that you can compromise here and there, but how do you judge what to compromise? So you put human at the center of that. So design thinking is also changed. It's provocative in nature. It helps to look at things in new lenses. I think that's the most important thing, is like how you get out of your mental models and look at something that's very, very different futures, and how you build their futures back from that sort of 3 years, 5 years. We don't do anything beyond 10 years because I tell my clients, like, you know, I mean, yes, I'm an economist by training, but we focus on the 5-year window. I tell them, like, in the long run, everybody dies, so who cares? So we don't do the long run. We do what 3 and 5 years matters. How do you bring sort of business and humanity together so that you can create a sustainable, because right now they're going different paths. Business is going a different path, and humanity is going a different path, and then sustainability is going a different path. So everything is very broken today. So quick lessons from Google. So if you talk to Larry Page, one of the founders of Google, he walk in, he doesn't want these people to improve the little search engine here, but small that. These things doesn't matter for him. He understands, he's a typical millennial, think about what the future is. And what he thinks is, I want things to be 10 times, 100 times better. And when I talk to other clients, and whether they're banks and insurance company, I said, like, what's your kind of improvement? They said, well, if I can do 1% improvement, I'm pretty happy. But they're talking about 10%, and people think, is that even possible? So what is the 500% improvement that require rethinking problems? Because we need to think bigger. And I think that we always say, well, only entrepreneurs does that. But I think that's not true today. I mean, you need to start thinking bigger when you start a business. It's not that. Whether you're in government, whether you're in an organization, nonprofit, or you're in business, you got to think bigger. Because anything you think small will be obsolete in 5 days, 5 weeks. So, and the moonshot mentality is a very important piece in design thinking. You got to solve problem, find something big to solve. And this is a project, one of their projects, basically they were deploying these little drones and in certain regions. So they promised that if you click on an app, if you need someone in a heart attack, these things will fly to you in 15 minutes because in very densely traffic areas, and you literally, an ambulance can't get through. So these are the problems they try to solve. And there are many, many of them. There's another one in rural India where they have all women riding bicycle carrying servers. So this service can provide internet access to the remote area. These are the things people don't think about, don't even dream about. But it doesn't require advanced technology. These are all simple stuff come together and say, what we're trying to do, what problem we're trying to solve. So I'll give you a little inspirations about what is shit for the moon. I think the moonshot mentality is important. So I'll give you a little 5 seconds movie. So it's natural for people to want to work on things that they know that it won't fail, right? And they call it being realistic, being practical. But that means that mentality holds us back to thinking about what problem we're trying to solve. What is that sort of 100x that we want to solve? And it's a quote from Page. He thinks that Google is only attacking 0.1% of the problem in this whole world. And even all the tech companies together, including sort of Apple's and Google's and Facebook, everyone comes together, only dealing with like maximum 1% of the problem that the world faces. So there's about 99% of opportunities that's opened up for all of you to do. So I think the mindset is like, what is that? Where do you find your 3%, your 4%? So you have the next 2 days to do this. So in the agricultural era, schools are kind of like a garden, right? People come up and they talk, they enjoy themselves, and they kind of sort of nurture the garden. And then when we move into the industrial age, when we start building factories in the 50s and 60s, and then the schools kind of mirror the assembly line. So people come in and do this is kind of like factory. And if you look at most schools, particularly in Asia, they're literally like factories, right? Students moving along the production line. And in the new digital industrial era, where that in this world where that digitalization is not just about sort of a city websites or all this social media thing, digital meaning that everything's being fully digitized. And what does it mean in the sense of response environment? And for that, and how would learning look like? And what would the organization looks like? Because this is the most sort of exciting, and if you ask I also work for the World Bank, and they agree with it. This is the most exciting things where that even it used to be competitive advantage are driven by some cluster, advanced technologies, and all of those things. But today, with these technologies, you don't have to be in the center of Silicon Valley or on the center of whatever Shenzhen to be part of it, to participate in this. And particularly, think in the context of Australia, I think it's a tremendous opportunity for every region, doesn't matter how small you are, to compete with that. Because it used to be driven by scale, right? In the old days, how does the large companies happen? The large companies, the General Electric of the world, they built this big enterprise based on strategic vertical and horizontal integration. So all the way from production to sort of manufacturing distribution. And achieve scale, they built this sort of gigantic enterprise. But today, this is not, you don't need this, because with these technologies, you can actually integrate with networks of collaborators and produce things and go through a system that doesn't require a full integration. So this is where the opportunity is for everyone, even though how small, how remote you are. And this is definitely proof this guy is wrong. Right, and this is probably the most respected economist. So he was, after years and years of studies, he's telling you that large companies are in better position to innovate, including large countries. It's the same thing, right? Because you have more money, so you can spread your costs in R&D. I can sort of spend money here and here and here. It won't kill me. And then you also have scale in learning. I can capture the learning from here and move the learning to there and the other one. So that makes perfect sense. And then they can also take more risks because I have a cash cow. I have my main business coming in, so I don't need to worry about that, so I can invest in over. So these are the same companies that are called the Kodak, the Microsoft of the world. Right? These are the companies I'll have lots of money. But Nokia, the same thing. And when Nokia and when Microsoft and Nokia joint ventures, the two giants that own two worlds, come together to try to win in the smartphone world, they fail so miserably. Despite billions of dollars, Microsoft just rolled off $18 billion in 12 months by buying Ericsson. So it's proven wrong. You're big, you have money, it's easy to, that's nonsense. But that's not evidence. Sorry, I shouldn't use that word. So it's about being smart, being small, being creative. I think there's a lot of, I think when my friend Richard Foyden coined the creative class, I think that does represent a big part of the millennial generations who really want to think what creative thinking they want to bring new solutions to old problems. So long-term structural transformation has 4 characteristics. You have scale, and the core assumptions. I think the core assumptions are a very important piece of rethinking about your starting point, your mental model about that. That's very hard to change because these are deeply embedded in organization, but has to start from there. And then you look at the duration, the impact is at sort of a 5-year time frame. And then the last one would be, how do you get emotional commitment? Because I think if you don't, you will not be able to be successful. Most companies, highly qualified people, walk into a large companies or government jobs, they literally check out their creativity, their imagination, their empathy, and they become part of a machine. But if you can harness that back to human capital, into bring back your empathy, bring back your humanity, bring back your imagination into the workplace, and how can we facilitate that kind of environment where you can actually come up with solutions? That's kind of what design thinking is. So environment that is typified by increased level of complexity and interconnectivity. The interconnectivity is a very interesting thing because right now you are all part of something. The minute you click on something, you're part of something. So what does regional economic development mean? So this is sort of your time for your moonshot. So my last takeaway is, I think there are just too many people working in Wall Street. That doesn't add enough value. I think it's time to be a design thinker, to think about how you actually create value from growing things, building things, and these are the things that actually create true value. I think the world will come to that realization very quickly. Thank you, and see if I can have the movie. Okay, okay? Thank you.